Close your eyes for a moment and picture a world without any of the gadgets we rely on today. No clocks ticking away the minutes, no calendars pinned to the wall, no glowing screens telling us exactly where we are and what time it is. Now, imagine standing in an open courtyard thousands of years ago, feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin, watching as shadows slowly creep across stone. In that quiet space, with nothing but sunlight and careful observation, ancient civilizations performed something close to magic. They tracked the seasons, predicted the turning of the year, and even calculated the equinox, all without a single tool. It sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? Yet this was reality for cultures across the globe, from the sun-baked plazas of the Maya to the sacred spaces of Egypt and China. They didn't need advanced technology. They had something even more powerful, an intimate connection to the cosmos, written in light and shadow. This video is an invitation to step into that world with us, to uncover the incredible secrets of how ancient courtyards served as open-air observatories, capturing the sun's movements with breathtaking precision. We're going to explore the architectural genius behind these designs, how walls, pillars, and markers were aligned not by chance, but with purposeful intelligence. We'll delve into why the equinox meant so much more than just a date on a calendar. It was a moment of perfect balance, deeply woven into agriculture, spirituality, and community life. And perhaps most importantly, we'll discover why this ancient knowledge still matters today, in an age where many of us feel disconnected from the natural rhythms that once guided human existence. This isn't just a story about the past. It's about rediscovering a lost art of celestial observation, one that speaks to our modern longing for sustainability, meaning, and a deeper bond with the world around us. So come with us on this journey back in time, as we decode the mysteries etched in stone and shadow, and uncover how humanity's oldest timekeeping methods continue to inspire wonder and wisdom today. At the heart of this entire story lies a simple yet profound celestial event, the equinox. The word itself comes from the Latin equus, meaning equal, and nox, meaning night. And that's precisely what happens. For just 2 days each year, one around March 20th and the other around September 22nd, the sun crosses directly over the Earth's equator. This geometric alignment results in nearly equal portions of daylight and darkness across the entire planet. But for ancient cultures, this was far more than an astronomical footnote. It was a moment of perfect cosmic balance, a sacred pivot point in the endless cycle of the seasons. Imagine the relief and hope it must have inspired after a long, dark winter, or the bittersweet signal to gather the final harvest before the cold set in. This moment of equilibrium was not something to be passively noted on a calendar. It was a dynamic, lived experience, deeply woven into the very fabric of survival and spirituality. This precise alignment was absolutely critical for agricultural societies, whose entire existence depended on reading the subtle cues of the natural world. Getting the timing wrong for planting seeds could mean the difference between a bountiful harvest and devastating famine. The vernal, or spring, equinox signaled that the earth was warming, the frosts were receding, and it was time to sow crops to take advantage of the coming rains and sunlight. Conversely, the autumnal equinox was a clear sign to begin the urgent work of harvesting, preserving food, and preparing the community for the leaner months ahead. These were not vague estimations. The ability to predict these turning points with accuracy was a matter of life and death, which is why so much intellectual energy was devoted to observing and marking these celestial events. It was a science born from necessity, refined through generations of careful watching and recording. Beyond the sheer practicality of farming, the equinox held immense spiritual power. In countless cultures, this balance of light and dark was seen as a divine symbol, a time when the veil between worlds was thin, a moment for rituals, offerings, and ceremonies to honor the gods of fertility, sun, and rain. It represented the eternal struggle and harmony between opposing forces, day and night, summer and winter, life and death. This wasn't abstract philosophy. It was a reality celebrated with feasts, bonfires, and gatherings in those specially designed courtyards and temples. The equinox was a shared experience that connected the community not only to each other but to the cosmos itself, reinforcing a world-view where humanity was an integral part of a larger, orderly, and meaningful universe. And the most astonishing part, they achieved this profound understanding without a single modern tool. There were no telescopes, no GPS satellites, no intricate clocks. Instead, they used the greatest instrument available to them, the sun itself, by tracking its path across the sky throughout the year, noting where it rose and set on the horizon, and observing the changing length and direction of shadows cast by trees, mountains, or simple poles. They built a complex and accurate understanding of celestial mechanics. They learned that on the equinox, the sun rises due east and sets due west, a fact we often take for granted today, but was a monumental discovery that allowed them to create fixed, reliable markers in their architecture. This deep, intimate connection to the rhythms of the sky reveals a way of life that was inherently synchronized with the cosmos, a harmony that our modern, indoor existence has largely forgotten. Now let's shift our gaze from the sky above to the ground beneath our feet, because this cosmic dance required a stage, a carefully constructed one. We often think of courtyards as peaceful retreats, places for community gathering or quiet reflection. But for ancient architects, they were something far more profound: precision instruments. These open spaces, enclosed by walls or colonnades, became giant sundials and celestial calendars, engineered with a level of sophistication that still commands respect. The genius wasn't in complex machinery. It was in the intentional, fixed design of the space itself. Every element, from the height of a surrounding wall to the placement of a single flagstone, was a calculated component in an astronomical device meant to last for generations. Consider the fundamental principle at work. The sun's path across the sky changes gradually each day. In summer, it rides high, casting short shadows. In winter, it arcs low, creating long, stretching shades. The architects knew that on the two equinoxes, the sun's behavior would be perfectly predictable. Their challenge was to design a space that would visually announce this specific day. They achieved this through alignments. A courtyard might be oriented so that its central axis pointed directly to the point on the horizon where the sun rises on the equinox. Or a precisely positioned pillar would be erected so that at local noon on that day, its shadow would fall along a north-south line or touch a specific marker inlaid in the floor. This wasn't a vague approximation. The tolerances were often astonishing, with errors of less than a single degree, achieved through painstaking observation and iteration. This architectural astronomy wasn't confined to one culture or continent. It was a global phenomenon born from a universal human need. In the grand ceremonial plazas of the Maya, like the one at Chichen Itza, the massive pyramids and platforms frame the sun's journey. The entire complex is a testament to a people deeply in tune with celestial cycles. Across the ocean, the Romans infused their domestic architecture with this wisdom. The atrium of a wealthy Roman villa, open to the sky, often featured a central pool called an impluvium. The movement of sunlight and shadow across this water's surface and onto the surrounding floor mosaics served as a subtle yet effective timekeeping device for the household, marking the passage of seasons. Even humble farmsteads likely used simple versions of this, perhaps a specific doorway or a standing stone in a yard that caught the light just right on the first day of spring. The true elegance of this system lies in its beautiful simplicity and passive operation. Unlike a modern clock, which requires energy and maintenance, a courtyard observatory simply exists. It needs no winding, no batteries, only sunlight. Once built, it functions flawlessly year after year, century after century, its accuracy baked into its very geometry. The walls don't move, the markers don't shift, the sun, in its eternal reliability, does all the work. This created a permanent communal reference point. Everyone in the community, from the farmer to the priest, could witness the alignment for themselves. It was a democratic science, a shared spectacle that reinforced social cohesion and a collective understanding of the natural world. This fusion of form and function, of art and science, stands as a powerful reminder of how our ancestors seamlessly integrated their daily lives with the grand cycles of the cosmos. So how exactly did they translate the grand concept of celestial balance into something they could see and measure right at their feet? The answer lies in one of the most fundamental and observable phenomena in nature, the behavior of shadows. This was the heart of their method, a beautifully simple yet profoundly accurate system of timekeeping. Think about it. A shadow is nothing more than an absence of light, a temporary silhouette, yet it holds a wealth of information about the sun's position. Ancient astronomers became masters at reading this language of light and darkness, turning an empty courtyard into a dynamic solar calculator. Throughout the year, the sun's changing path causes dramatic shifts in the shadows it creates. In the height of summer, when the sun is at its highest point in the sky, a vertical object like a stone pillar or a tall pole will cast a short, compact shadow at noon. As the seasons turn toward winter and the sun's arc sinks lower, that same object's shadow will grow longer and longer, stretching out like a slow-moving sundial hand. The key was to track these daily changes meticulously, to note the subtle, incremental differences. They weren't just watching for big changes. They were looking for a specific, momentary alignment that would only happen on 2 perfect days of the year. The equinox was the grand reveal, the day when everything fell into perfect order. On this day, the sun rises precisely due east and sets exactly due west, no matter where you are on the planet. This unique solar position creates a unique shadow pattern. A vertical object known as a gnomon will cast a shadow that points directly west at sunrise and directly east at sunset. But the most critical observation often came at local solar noon, the moment when the sun reaches its highest point in the sky for that day. On the equinox, the tip of that noontime shadow would fall along a perfect north-south line. If an observer had engraved a straight line running north to south on the ground, the shadow would align with it perfectly at that exact moment. Alternatively, the length of the noon shadow on the equinox could be used to calculate latitude, but for most, it was the direction that served as the clear, undeniable signal. This is where the architectural design of the courtyard became essential. It provided the fixed, unchanging stage for this daily shadow play. A designer might intentionally place a single, sleek obelisk in the very center of a paved plaza. Over months and years, observers would watch where the tip of its shadow landed at noon, painstakingly carving small marks or setting stones into the pavement at the furthest points it reached during the solstices. The space between these 2 extreme points created a scale. Right in the middle of that scale, they would place the most important marker of all, the equinox stone. For most of the year, the shadow would miss this central stone, but on the equinox, as if by magic, the shadow's tip would land directly upon it, announcing the arrival of balance with silent, absolute certainty. The true stroke of genius was that this entire sophisticated system required no moving parts, no technology, and no energy source other than the sun itself. The only tools were a carefully placed vertical object and a series of permanent markers on the ground. The human eye was the sensor, and generations of accumulated knowledge provided the processing power. This was science in its purest form, direct observation of the natural world, leading to a repeatable, verifiable result. It showcased an ingenuity that didn't rely on complexity, but on a deep understanding of consistency and pattern, proving that some of the most elegant solutions are often the simplest ones, written in light and stone for all to see. Now, while we've been focusing on human-made courtyards, some of the most breathtaking examples of ancient solar observation blend architecture with the raw, natural landscape. And perhaps no sight illustrates this beautiful synergy more dramatically than the sun dagger of Chaco Canyon. Perched high on a mesa in what is now New Mexico, this isn't a constructed plaza with walls and pillars, but a stunning collaboration between human artistry and geological chance. Around 1,000 years ago, the ancestral Puebloan people, a sophisticated culture often known as the Anasazi, identified a unique rock formation. 3 large stone slabs had fallen in such a way against a cliff face that they created narrow slits and openings between them. Behind these slabs, on a shaded rock panel, they carefully pecked a series of petroglyphs into the stone, most notably a large, intricate spiral and a smaller companion spiral. This location was no accident. It was chosen with incredible foresight. The creators understood that these stone slits would act like a camera's aperture, controlling and focusing beams of sunlight with razor-sharp precision. For most of the year, these light beams dance across the rock face in seemingly random patterns. But on the most spiritually significant days of the year, the sun, the earth, and this rock art enter into a perfect, silent alignment. During the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, a single dagger of light appears and slices directly through the center of the large spiral. At the winter solstice, 2 daggers of light perfectly bracket the same spiral, framing it in brilliant sunlight. But the show isn't over. On the spring and autumn equinox, that same beam of light transforms. It becomes a single, sharp shaft that pierces right through the very heart of the smaller spiral, an unmistakable signal that day and night are once again in perfect balance. The genius of the sun dagger lies in its passive yet incredibly precise operation. There were no moving parts to adjust, no calculations to be made on the day. The architecture was fixed, and the cosmos provided the motion. This meant the entire community could gather to witness this celestial event, a shared experience that confirmed the turning of the seasons, guided agricultural cycles, and undoubtedly reinforced their spiritual beliefs about order and harmony in the universe. The spiral petroglyphs themselves are believed to be more than just targets. They are powerful symbols found throughout the region, often representing the sun, the path of life, or a portal to other worlds. The light dagger activating them would have been seen as a moment of divine communication, a sacred interaction between the heavens and the earth. What makes the sun dagger so relevant to our discussion of courtyards is the underlying principle it shares with them: the use of fixed, intentional design to capture and interpret the sun's movement. Whether it's a man-made wall casting a shadow onto a marked stone floor, or a natural rock slab casting a beam of light onto a carved spiral, the concept is identical. It demonstrates that this celestial knowledge wasn't confined to one type of structure or one specific culture. The ancestral Puebloans of Chaco Canyon, working at the same time as medieval Europeans were building their first great cathedrals, possessed a sophisticated understanding of solar geometry that allowed them to create a precise, multi-purpose calendar etched directly into the living rock. It stands as a powerful testament to the universal human drive to find meaning and order in the sky above, using whatever tools, both natural and crafted, were available. While the sun dagger of Chaco Canyon showcases a breathtaking fusion of nature and purpose, this same drive to capture celestial moments was unfolding independently across the globe, with civilizations erecting monumental architecture to achieve the same goal. The desire to mark the equinox was a universal human impulse, and the solutions they devised, though separated by vast oceans and millennia, speak a common language of geometry and light. In the sun-scorched sands of Egypt, the great temple of Abu Simbel stands as a testament to this ambition, engineered with a precision that still inspires awe. Commissioned by Pharaoh Ramesses II around 1264 BCE, the temple's design is a masterclass in solar alignment. Its entrance is flanked by 4 colossal seated statues of the pharaoh himself, but the true magic happens deep within the mountain. The inner sanctum, some 200 feet from the entrance, houses statues of the gods Ptah and Ammon, the deified Ramesses, and the sun god Ra. For 364 days of the year, this chamber lies in deep shadow. But on 2 specific days, a beam of sunlight pierces the long, dark hallway. It illuminates the statues of Ammon, Ra, and Ramesses, leaving only Ptah, the god of darkness, in shadow. For decades, this event was thought to occur on the pharaoh's birthday and his coronation day. However, more recent research suggests one of these sacred days aligns perfectly with the equinox, a moment of cosmic balance when the sun's power was harnessed to literally illuminate the divine right of the king, merging celestial mechanics with political authority in a single, brilliant shaft of light. Journeying east to China, we find a different but equally profound expression of this celestial relationship. In Beijing, the Temple of Heaven complex, constructed in the early 15th century, served as the stage for the most important rituals of the Ming and Qing dynasties. Here, the connection was not about illuminating a dark inner chamber, but about aligning human movement with the cosmos. The entire layout is deeply symbolic. The circular hall of prayer for good harvests, with its 3-tiered blue roof representing heaven, is positioned at the northern end of a long, raised processional walkway. To the south lies the square imperial vault of heaven, symbolizing the earth. This north-south axis was a sacred path. During the winter solstice, the emperor would journey from the Forbidden City to the Temple of Heaven to perform rites asking for a bountiful year. While the solstice was the main event, the precise solar alignments woven into the complex's design, including its altars and gates, also honored the equinoxes as critical pivot points in the agricultural and celestial cycle. The Emperor, the Son of Heaven, was acting as the conduit between the human world and the cosmic order, and his rituals were perfectly timed by the very architecture that surrounded him. Venturing into ancient Europe, the evidence becomes older and more enigmatic, yet no less compelling. While Stonehenge in England is famously aligned with the solstices, many lesser-known Neolithic sites across the British Isles and mainland Europe show clear equinoctial alignments. Think of the massive passage tombs like Newgrange in Ireland or Michaud in Scotland. These are, in a sense, the inverse of a sunlit courtyard. They are dark, enclosed chambers designed to be penetrated by a single, specific beam of light. While Newgrange is famous for its winter solstice illumination, other passage graves and stone circles, such as the enigmatic Callanish stones on the Isle of Lewis, are oriented in ways that suggest they also mark the equal nights of the equinox. These were not just calendars, they were likely portals to the otherworld, places where the community could gather to witness the rebirth of the sun at these key times of year, affirming life and order in the face of darkness and chaos. From the deserts of Egypt to the plains of China and the misty hills of Europe, these diverse structures, temples, altars, and stone circles form a powerful, interconnected story. They reveal that this was not an isolated discovery but a universal human endeavor. Separated by culture, language, and thousands of years, different civilizations all looked up at the same sun and arrived at the same conclusion. Its path could be mapped, predicted, and honored through intentional design. They used the materials they had: stone, earth, and timber, to build their understanding of the cosmos directly into the landscape. This shared legacy shows us that the drive to find our place in the universe, to seek balance and meaning in the turning of the seasons, is one of the most fundamental and enduring aspects of the human experience. This reliance on symmetry wasn't just an architectural preference, it was the very foundation of accuracy in these ancient observatories. Think of a perfectly symmetrical courtyard as a carefully calibrated instrument. When the entire space is balanced around a central axis, the behavior of light and shadow becomes wonderfully predictable. A shadow cast from a central object will behave in a mirrored, identical way on either side of that dividing line. This predictability was absolutely crucial for pinpointing the equinox with certainty. On any other day of the year, the sun's path is asymmetrical relative to this central axis. It rises and sets either north or south of due east and west. This means the shadows it creates will be lopsided. They might stretch longer on one side of the courtyard or fall at an awkward angle. But on the equinox, everything snaps into perfect order. The sun, rising precisely due east and setting due west, treats both halves of the symmetrical courtyard exactly the same. A shadow cast at noon will fall directly along the north-south center line, and its movement throughout the day will be a flawless, balanced dance. We see this principle brought to life in the ingenious placement of central features. Imagine a shallow, reflective pool placed exactly in the middle of a rectangular courtyard. On the morning of the equinox, as the sun climbs, the shadow of the western wall would slowly retreat across the water's surface in perfect synchronicity with the advancing sunlight from the east. At the precise moment of local noon, the pool would be perfectly illuminated, with no shadows from the surrounding structures marring its surface, a brilliant, liquid confirmation of the sun's apex. Alternatively, a single, slender column or obelisk erected at the dead center becomes a powerful gnomon. Throughout the year, its shadow sweeps across the paved ground in a messy, ever-changing arc. But on the equinox, that arc becomes a clean, straight line at noon, and the path it traces from sunrise to sunset is perfectly symmetrical. Designers would often inlay contrasting stones or carve shallow channels along this predicted path, creating a permanent track against which they could visually verify the shadow's perfect alignment. This architectural balance was far more than a technical solution. It was a physical manifestation of a deep-seated philosophical and spiritual worldview. For cultures from the Greeks and Romans to the Maya and the Chinese, the cosmos was not a chaotic place. It was an ordered, harmonious system governed by principles of balance and symmetry. The macrocosm of the universe was reflected in the microcosm of human design. Building a symmetrical courtyard was a way to echo the perceived symmetry of the heavens themselves, the balance of day and night, the pairing of constellations, the predictable cycles of the planets. The equinox, as the ultimate symbol of this balance, deserved a stage that reflected its perfection. Therefore, the act of observing the equinox in such a space was not merely a scientific exercise. It was a ritual that reinforced the community's place within a harmonious cosmic order. The accuracy of the observation was guaranteed by the symmetry of the design, and that symmetry, in turn, affirmed a fundamental truth about the nature of their world. But the true power of the equinox extended far beyond the stone markers and measured shadows. It resonated in the human heart and spirit. For ancient cultures, this celestial event was a profound spiritual anchor, a moment that symbolized the very essence of rebirth, perfect balance, and the eternal cycle of life and death. Imagine the feeling in a community after a long, harsh winter. The world is cold and dormant, food stores are dwindling, and the future is uncertain. Then the spring equinox arrives. The sun's triumph over darkness is not just a meteorological fact, it is a promise fulfilled. It is a visceral, collective sigh of relief and a surge of hope. This was a time when the veil between the earthly and the divine was believed to be at its thinnest, a sacred opportunity for communication, gratitude, and ritual that connected every member of the community to the cosmos and to each other. We can see this deep spiritual connection vividly in the traditions of the Maya. In their grand ceremonial centers like Chichen Itza, the architecture itself became a participant in the drama. On the equinox, the setting sun would cast a shadow along the steps of the Great Pyramid of Kukulkan, creating the illusion of a massive serpent slithering down to earth. This was not seen as a simple trick of the light. It was the descent of the feathered serpent god, a powerful deity associated with agriculture, rain, and time itself. The entire community would gather to witness this spectacle, a moment that blended advanced astronomical understanding with profound religious awe. Priests would perform rituals to honor the gods, seeking their blessings for the upcoming planting season, ensuring rain and a bountiful harvest. The equinox was the clock that synchronized their entire spiritual and agricultural calendar, a day when science and faith were inseparable partners. Travel across the globe to Persia, and we find another powerful celebration rooted in the equinox, Nauruz. This ancient festival, which marks the Persian New Year, begins precisely at the moment the sun crosses the celestial equator. Nauruz, which translates to New Day, is a 2-week-long celebration of renewal, fertility, and the cleansing of the past. Families gather around a special table called the haft scene, which is adorned with 7 symbolic items, each starting with the Persian letter S, like sprouts for rebirth, apples for beauty, and garlic for health. They clean their homes from top to bottom, wear new clothes, and visit family and friends. This tradition, thousands of years old and still vibrant today, shows how the equinox was a catalyst for social and spiritual rejuvenation, a time to literally and metaphorically turn over a new leaf in harmony with the natural world. This is why the courtyards we've been discussing were so much more than passive observatories. They were the sacred theaters where this cosmic drama played out. These were not cold, scientific laboratories. They were vibrant, communal spaces pulsating with energy. On the morning of the equinox, people would not just quietly note the alignment of a shadow. They would gather, perhaps in hushed anticipation at first, and then erupt into celebration as the sun's beam hit its mark or the shadow touched its stone. There would be chanting, music, offerings of the first fruits of the season, and prayers of thanksgiving. These spaces served to democratize the celestial event. Everyone, from the highest priest to the most humble farmer, could stand together and witness the miracle of cosmic order with their own eyes. It was a shared experience that reinforced social bonds, cultural identity, and a collective sense of wonder. This beautiful integration of empirical observation and spiritual reverence is something much of modern society has lost. Today, we often see science and spirituality as opposing forces, 2 different languages for describing the world. But for these ancient cultures, they were a single, unified dialect. The precise measurement of the sun's path did not diminish its sacredness, it enhanced it. Knowing exactly when the equinox would occur allowed them to prepare for it properly, to heighten the spiritual significance of the moment. It was a practice that acknowledged humanity's small place in a vast universe, while also celebrating our unique ability to understand its rhythms and find profound meaning within them. Their courtyards stand as permanent monuments to this holistic worldview, reminding us that the pursuit of knowledge and the experience of wonder can, and perhaps should, be one and the same. What truly sets these ancient systems apart is their elegant simplicity and remarkable resilience. They were masterpieces of passive observation, designed to function for generations without any need for maintenance, calibration, or human intervention beyond the initial act of watching. In a world before precision gears, glass lenses, or electrical power, these courtyards achieved something we often associate with high technology: reliable, accurate, and consistent data collection. The entire mechanism was powered by the one constant force our ancestors could always depend on: the unwavering journey of the sun across the sky. This was timekeeping in its purest, most sustainable form. Think about the components of a modern instrument, like a telescope or a clock. They have moving parts that can wear down, mechanisms that require cleaning, and power sources that can fail. Now picture an ancient courtyard observatory. Its key components were utterly static: a permanently fixed vertical gnomon, like a stone pillar, and a series of unchanging markers set into the ground or carved into a wall. There was nothing to adjust, nothing to wind, and nothing to break. The only thing in motion was the sun itself, performing its daily and annual dance with perfect regularity. This passivity was the secret to its phenomenal longevity. A sundial made of brass will eventually corrode. A carved stone marker can endure for millennia, as many indeed have. This is why we can still find and decipher these ancient sites today. Their simplicity was their greatest strength, preserving their function across centuries. This design philosophy also drastically minimized the potential for error. In a system with no moving parts, there are very few variables that can go wrong. The measurement wasn't dependent on the skill of a single person reading a complex instrument. It was a communal, verifiable event. On the morning of the equinox, anyone standing in the courtyard could witness the shadow slowly creeping toward its target marker. There was no debate, no calculation, no need for expert interpretation. The sun itself provided the proof, and the architecture made it visible to all. This democratic nature of the observation made the result undeniable and built immense trust in the system. It was science that belonged to the entire community, not just an elite few. This approach reveals a profound principle that feels incredibly relevant today: the power of working with nature rather than against it. These ancient builders didn't try to conquer or control the solar cycle. They learned its rules and then designed structures that harmonized with them. They integrated their timekeeping device directly into their environment and their daily lives. A courtyard was already a central space for cooking, socializing, and commerce. By embedding the calendar into the very floor they walked on, they ensured that awareness of the cosmic cycle was a natural, integrated part of existence. You wouldn't have to go to a special building or consult a priest. You would see the lengthening shadow as you went about your day, a constant, gentle reminder of the turning seasons. This stands in stark contrast to our modern relationship with time, which is often mediated through a screen, a device that requires constant charging and connectivity. Our precision is incredible, but it is also fragile and disconnected from the natural world. The genius of the passive courtyard observatory was its robust, off-grid simplicity. It asked for nothing, yet it provided everything a society needed to thrive: the knowledge of when to plant, when to harvest, when to celebrate, and when to prepare. It represents a pinnacle of low-tech, high-intelligence design, a testament to the fact that the most sophisticated solutions aren't always the most complex ones, but rather those that listen most closely to the rhythms of the world. While the visual spectacle of sunlight and shadow might seem like intuitive artistry, it was actually underpinned by a remarkably sophisticated and deliberate mathematical framework. The ancient architects who designed these celestial courtyards were not just skilled builders, they were accomplished geometers and astronomers, wielding mathematical principles with a precision that allowed them to encode the movements of the heavens directly into stone and mortar. This wasn't about rough estimations or lucky guesses. It was a rigorous science, one that relied on a profound understanding of ratios, angles, and proportions to achieve its breathtaking accuracy. Consider the fundamental challenge they faced: to ensure that a shadow would touch a specific marker only on the day of the equinox. They had to solve a complex spatial problem. The length and direction of a shadow are determined by the sun's altitude, its height above the horizon, which changes throughout the day and the year. The key was to calculate the exact angle of the sun's rays at local noon on the equinox for their specific latitude. Once they knew this solar altitude angle, the rest was a matter of applied geometry. They could use this angle to determine the precise relationship between the height of an object, like a column or a wall, and the length of the shadow it would cast. For instance, if the sun's altitude at noon on the equinox was 45 degrees, they knew that a column 10 units high would cast a shadow exactly 10 units long. By inlaying a marker 10 units away from the base of that column, they created a fail-proof system. The shadow would only reach that exact spot when the sun was at that specific 45-degree altitude in the sky, which only happened on 2 days each year. This is where revered mathematical concepts like the golden ratio likely came into play. This special proportion, approximately 1.618 to 1, appears repeatedly in nature and art, and it was believed to create a sense of perfect harmony and beauty. It's highly probable that ancient designers used this ratio to determine the ideal proportions of their courtyards, not just for aesthetics but for astronomical function. The ratio between the height of an enclosing wall and the width of the open space, or the placement of a central feature relative to the perimeter, could all be calculated using these harmonious principles. This ensured the space was not only pleasing to the eye but also perfectly scaled to capture the subtle play of light throughout the solar year. Similarly, the principles of right-angled triangles, understood centuries before Pythagoras formalized his theorem, were essential tools. By thinking of the gnomon as the vertical leg of a triangle and its shadow as the horizontal leg, they could predict the length of the hypotenuse, the path of the sun's ray, and thus control exactly where that ray would land. The transmission of this knowledge is a story in itself. In some cultures, these mathematical insights were guarded secrets, passed down through generations of master builders within guilds or priestly classes through oral tradition and hands-on apprenticeship. A seasoned architect would teach his apprentice not just how to build a wall, but why it had to be a certain height and no other, embedding the celestial mathematics into the very craft of construction. In other, more bureaucratic societies like ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, this knowledge was likely encoded in architectural manuals and scrolls, the precious textbooks of their day. Though few of these documents have survived, the enduring precision of the structures they designed is a silent testament to the robust and formalized system of calculation that existed. This blend of empirical observation and mathematical rigor transforms our perception of these sites. They were not merely arranged by superstition or ritual. They were engineered with the calculated intent of a modern observatory, proving that the drive to quantify and understand the universe is a truly ancient and noble human pursuit. While the equinox provided that crucial moment of perfect balance, ancient astronomers knew that the sun's journey held other, equally vital turning points throughout the year. Their courtyard observatories were not single-purpose instruments. They were sophisticated, multi-function calendars designed to track the entire solar cycle. The two solstices represented the dramatic extremes of this cycle, the summer solstice bringing the longest day and the shortest night, a peak of solar power and vitality, while the winter solstice offered the shortest day and longest night, a time of deep introspection and the symbolic rebirth of the sun. But the tracking didn't stop there. Many cultures also marked the cross-quarter days, the precise midpoints between a solstice and an equinox. These dates, like Imbolc or Beltane in the Celtic tradition, often signaled more subtle seasonal shifts, the first hints of spring thaw or the peak of summer's warmth, that were critical for managing crops and livestock. This required a far more complex and intentional design than a single equinox marker. A masterfully planned courtyard would be inscribed with a whole series of alignment points. Imagine a wide, circular plaza with a tall central obelisk, radiating out from its base like spokes on a wheel, would be a series of carefully placed stones or engraved lines. The outermost stone in one direction might mark the point where the tip of the obelisk's shadow landed at noon on the winter solstice, its longest possible reach. Directly opposite, a much closer stone would mark the dramatically shortened noon shadow of the summer solstice. Exactly halfway between these two extreme points would lie the equinox marker. But between these primary points, additional, smaller stones could be set to indicate the cross-quarter days, creating a comprehensive 8-point calendar that divided the year into its most agriculturally and spiritually significant segments. This holistic system transformed a simple courtyard into a complete environmental dashboard. A community leader or designated observer could walk the space each day, noting the progressive movement of the noon shadow. Its journey from one marker to the next provided a continuous visual countdown to the next seasonal event. This wasn't abstract knowledge, it was actionable intelligence that dictated the rhythm of daily life. The shadow approaching the summer solstice marker wasn't just a celestial event. It was a signal to begin preparing the irrigation channels for the dry weeks ahead. The shadow touching the cross-quarter stone marking the end of harvest was a command to begin winnowing grain and organizing community storage. This single, integrated space could guide planting, harvesting, religious festivals, and market days with unerring accuracy. The sheer versatility of this approach highlights the depth of ancient astronomical understanding. They didn't see the equinox in isolation. They understood it as one essential component in a continuous, predictable cycle. By designing their architecture to map this entire cycle, they created a self-operating, perpetual calendar that was both a scientific instrument and a sacred map of time itself. This ability to chart the sun's entire journey, from its deepest winter retreat to its summer zenith and back again, provided a profound sense of order and predictability in a world that could often feel unpredictable, granting them not just the knowledge of when the seasons would turn, but the confidence to build a civilization in harmony with them. Yet for all the brilliant passivity of the stone and shadow, these ancient observatories were far from autonomous. They required the most sophisticated component of all, the human mind. The silent courtyards and precisely placed markers were merely the instrument. It was the skilled observer who played the music, reading the subtle language of light with an expertise born of lifelong dedication. These individuals, be they priests, elders, or designated astronomer scribes, were the living heart of the entire system, the crucial link between the silent dance of the cosmos and the vibrant needs of the community. Their daily vigil transformed abstract alignments into actionable wisdom, blending sharp-eyed observation with deep, traditional knowledge. This was not a task for the casual glance. It demanded a disciplined, daily practice of noting the slightest variations. An observer would likely visit the courtyard at the same times each day, perhaps at sunrise, local noon, and sunset, mentally charting the shadow's path. They weren't just waiting for the big events like the equinox. They were tracking the sun's incremental journey day by day. A seasoned expert could detect a shift in the shadow's length of just a finger's width, a tiny change that signaled the sun's slow ascent or descent in the sky. This granular data allowed them to predict the arrival of the equinox with increasing certainty as the days drew nearer, much like a sailor senses a coming storm by reading the waves and the wind. Their role was one of profound patience and meticulous attention to detail, a human counterpart to the stone's unwavering stillness. The knowledge they wielded was often esoteric, a form of power carefully guarded and passed down through generations within a select group. A young apprentice might spend years simply watching and listening before being trusted to interpret the signs independently. This wasn't merely about memorizing dates, it was about understanding the nuances. They learned to account for local atmospheric conditions, like the way morning haze might slightly diffuse a shadow's edge, or how a particularly hot day could cause heat shimmer to distort the view. They combined the fixed geometrical rules of the courtyard with a deep, place-based wisdom about their specific environment, creating a living science that was both universally true and locally adapted. Their interpretations went far beyond simple timekeeping. When the observer announced the imminent equinox, they weren't just giving a date, they were triggering a cascade of social and spiritual preparations. Their word would set in motion the entire community's activities. Farmers would begin sharpening their tools and selecting seed, knowing the planting window was about to open. Priests would start preparing the sacred regalia and offerings for the upcoming ceremonies. The observer's pronouncement was the starting gun for the season, a moment of immense responsibility. Their accuracy directly influenced the community's survival and prosperity, making them figures of immense respect and authority, the vital bridge between the heavens and the harvest. This seamless integration of architecture and environment reveals a level of ecological mindfulness that feels remarkably modern. These ancient builders understood that they were not separate from their landscape but a part of it. Their goal wasn't to conquer or flatten the terrain to impose their will, but to listen to it, to learn from its existing rhythms and features, and to build in respectful conversation with it. A hill wasn't an obstacle to be removed. It was a natural backrest for an amphitheater or a perfect elevated platform for observation. A grove of ancient trees wasn't merely lumber, it was a living calendar, its bare winter branches and full summer canopy providing a secondary, biological confirmation of the solar cycle. This philosophy stands in stark contrast to later approaches that often sought to dominate nature. Instead, it reflects a worldview of harmony, where human structures were designed to amplify the natural world's inherent order, not overwrite it. This deep respect created spaces that felt inherently right, places where the built and the born environments were in a state of graceful equilibrium, a testament to a sustainable way of thinking that we are only now, centuries later, beginning to rediscover and truly appreciate. So how do we know all of this with such certainty today? How can we be sure that a particular wall or a solitary standing stone was intentionally placed to catch the equinox sun, and not just a happy coincidence of ancient construction? The answer lies in the fascinating work of modern archaeologists and astronomers who have become celestial detectives, using an array of high-tech tools to reverse engineer these ancient blueprints and listen to the whispers of the stones. It's a meticulous process of validation, a way of having a conversation across millennia to confirm the genius of our ancestors. They begin with the broadest view possible, literally from space. Satellite imagery and aerial LiDAR surveys allow them to map entire ceremonial complexes and their relationship to the surrounding landscape with centimeter-level accuracy. This bird's eye view can reveal grand, overarching patterns of alignment, how a processional way points toward a distant mountain peak, or how the main axis of a temple is oriented, that are impossible to see from the ground. These technologies can even peer beneath dense jungle canopies or layers of soil to find forgotten structures, piecing together a complete picture of the ancient architectural plan. But the true magic happens when they bring this data down to Earth, combining it with painstaking on-the-ground measurements. Using precision tools like theodolites and high-resolution GPS, researchers will spend weeks, even months, at a site. They will chart the exact orientation of every significant wall, pillar, and doorway, creating an incredibly detailed digital map. Then they turn to the sun. Using sophisticated 3D modeling software, they can simulate the sun's path across the sky for any day of the year, at any point in history, accounting for tiny celestial shifts over centuries. They can digitally recreate the ancient courtyard and literally watch the play of light and shadow as it would have happened thousands of years ago. They test their hypotheses virtually. Does the shadow of that obelisk actually hit the center of that carved stone on the spring equinox? Does the sun really illuminate the inner sanctum at dawn? The software provides a definitive, testable answer, allowing them to separate intentional alignment from random chance with statistical confidence. This forensic approach consistently leads to stunning revelations. Features that might have been dismissed by earlier archaeologists as purely decorative or ritualistic are now understood for their dual purpose. A peculiar notch in a crumbling wall is no longer seen as damage from age. The 3D model shows it frames the rising sun on the equinox. A seemingly random collection of stones embedded in a floor is revealed to be a precise scale marking the solstices and equinoxes. What appeared to be arbitrary choices are unmasked as deliberate, calculated astronomical decisions. This work often validates long-held local traditions or deciphers cryptic ancient texts, proving that the stories passed down through generations or the instructions left by priest astronomers were based on real, observable science. It's a powerful moment of connection where modern technology confirms ancient wisdom, closing the loop of time and giving us profound respect for the intellectual achievements of these cultures. This process doesn't just teach us about the past, it offers invaluable lessons for our future. By understanding how ancient societies used passive solar design to achieve perfect harmony with their environment, we are inspired to create our own modern buildings that are both energy efficient and spiritually connected to the natural world, building a new future on the timeless foundations of the past. It's tempting to look at these ancient sites and chalk up their celestial alignments to coincidence or perhaps even imaginative overinterpretation by modern researchers. After all, with so many old structures scattered across the globe, isn't it statistically probable that a few just happen to line up with the sun? This is perhaps the most common and pervasive myth surrounding ancient astronomy, but it's one that crumbles under the weight of rigorous scientific scrutiny. When archaeologists and astronomers began applying statistical analysis to these sites, the results were nothing short of revelatory. They didn't just look at one temple facing east, they mapped hundreds of them across a region. In Mesoamerica, for example, studies of Maya ceremonial centers show an overwhelming non-random distribution of orientations tightly clustered around specific azimuths that correspond to the sun's position on the solstices and equinoxes. The probability of this happening by chance is astronomically low. This isn't about finding a single needle in a haystack. It's about finding that the entire haystack is deliberately woven from needles pointing to the same celestial events. The patterns are consistent, repeatable, and clearly intentional, reflecting a shared cultural knowledge that was applied across vast distances and centuries. Another popular misconception seeks to explain away this sophistication by attributing it to outside, otherworldly influences. The idea that ancient aliens provided the blueprints for these astronomical marvels. This myth, though often presented in an entertaining way, does a profound disservice to the ingenuity of our ancestors. It strips them of their own intellect and perseverance, reducing their incredible achievements to something they merely received rather than something they built through generations of painstaking effort. The reality is far more impressive and deeply human. What we are witnessing is the culmination of a long-term scientific project, passed down from master to apprentice, refined through trial and error, and perfected over hundreds of years. A master builder didn't just wake up one day and know exactly where to place a stone to catch the equinox light. That knowledge was earned through centuries of daily observation, careful record keeping on clay tablets or in oral poetry, and a gradual, collective deepening of understanding about the patterns of their world. Think about the process. An early observer might have simply noticed that the sun rose over a particular mountain peak on the first day of spring. The next generation might have marked that spot with a pile of stones. Their descendants over decades would have refined that marker, perhaps noticing that the shadow from that stone pile touched a certain tree at noon. Eventually, this accumulated wisdom would be encoded into the very architecture of a temple, designed to last for millennia. This was a slow, organic, and brilliantly human process of discovery. To call it alien is to miss the true story, one of relentless curiosity, patience, and a powerful drive to understand the universe using nothing but the human mind, the naked eye, and a deep connection to the environment. This human-centric explanation doesn't diminish the wonder, it amplifies it. It means that we, as a species, are capable of extraordinary things through collaboration and dedicated observation. Demystifying these achievements in this way actually allows us to honor our ancestors properly, giving them the credit they truly deserve. They weren't passive recipients of knowledge, they were active, brilliant scientists and engineers. They faced very real problems: when to plant crops, when to expect rains, when to hold ceremonies to maintain social order, and they used the tools available to them to solve those problems with elegance and precision. By recognizing their work as a testament to human ingenuity, we can engage with history more honestly and find inspiration in their resourcefulness. Their legacy isn't a mystery to be solved with fantastical theories, but a challenge to us in the modern era, to observe our world more closely, to design in harmony with nature, and to build a body of knowledge that might, in its own way, inspire wonder thousands of years from now. While we often marvel at these ancient achievements as historical curiosities, their legacy is not confined to the past. It actively shapes our present and offers a blueprint for a more sustainable future. The principles of passive solar design, so brilliantly demonstrated in those ancient courtyards, have found a powerful resurgence in modern architecture and urban planning. Today's green buildings are their direct descendants, engineered to harness the sun's energy for heating, lighting, and cooling, dramatically reducing our reliance on artificial climate control and fossil fuels. Think of a contemporary passive house, its large south-facing windows strategically positioned to capture the low winter sun, flooding interior spaces with warmth, while its carefully calculated roof overhangs block the high summer sun to keep those same rooms cool. This isn't a new technology. It's a sophisticated application of the very same solar geometry that ancient builders used to align their courtyards. Urban planners are now applying these lessons on a grander scale, designing entire communities with streets oriented to maximize solar gain in the winter and encourage natural ventilation in the summer, creating more comfortable and energy-efficient living environments for everyone. Beyond the practicalities of construction, the cultural heartbeat of the equinox continues to pulse strongly across the globe. These celestial events are far from forgotten relics. They are vibrant, living traditions that draw millions of people together in celebration. Every March and September, crowds gather at iconic sites like Chichen Itza in Mexico to witness the descent of the serpent shadow, just as their ancestors did. In Iran and other parts of the Middle East and Central Asia, the ancient festival of Nauruz, the Persian New Year beginning at the exact moment of the spring equinox, is celebrated with feasts, family gatherings, and symbolic rituals of renewal that have persisted for over 3,000 years. Japan marks both equinoxes as national holidays, Shunbun no Hai and Shubun no Hai, a time for visiting family graves and reflecting on the balance of nature. These enduring festivals prove that our human need to acknowledge and celebrate our place within the cosmic cycle is as strong today as it ever was, providing a vital thread of cultural continuity in an ever-changing world. Perhaps the most profound legacy of these ancient practices is the philosophical invitation they extend to us in our modern, hyper-connected lives. In an age dominated by digital screens and artificial schedules, we have become increasingly disconnected from the natural rhythms that once guided human existence. The slow, patient observation required to read a shadow's journey stands in stark contrast to our constant demand for instant information and immediate gratification. This ancient knowledge serves as a powerful reminder of the value of what we might now call slow living, the practice of being present, observant, and deeply attuned to our environment. Reconnecting with these cycles isn't about abandoning technology. It's about finding a healthier balance, using our modern tools while also making space to notice the lengthening of a day, the changing angle of the light through a window, or the arrival of a new season. This reconnection offers a profound sense of well-being, grounding us in a reality larger than our daily concerns and reducing the anxiety that so often comes from our fast-paced, indoor-centric lifestyles. It encourages a form of mindfulness that is literally built into the fabric of our planet, reminding us that true sustainability isn't just about solar panels and efficient appliances, but about cultivating a deeper, more respectful relationship with the natural world that sustains us all. The best part about all of this ancient wisdom is that it isn't locked away in a museum or a textbook. It's a living science that you can actively participate in right now, with items you probably have around your home. You don't need a stone obelisk or a grand plaza to become a celestial observer. You can start with a simple stick, a patch of sunlight, and a bit of curiosity. This hands-on experiment is more than just a fun project. It's a direct connection to the minds of those ancient astronomers, allowing you to see the world through their eyes and understand the principles they mastered through daily, patient observation. Here's how you can begin your own journey as a modern-day sky watcher. Find a straight stick about the length of a ruler and push it firmly into a level patch of ground where the sun will shine uninterrupted from morning until evening. This stick is your gnomon, your very own version of an ancient pillar. Just after sunrise, take a small stone or a piece of chalk and carefully mark the exact tip of the shadow cast by your stick. Do this again at different times throughout the day, mid-morning, local noon, mid-afternoon, and just before sunset. If you repeat this process over several days, you'll start to see a beautiful pattern emerge. Each mark will create a gentle curve on the ground, and by connecting these dots, you'll see the distinct arc of the sun's path for that particular day. As you continue your observations week after week, the real magic starts to unfold. You'll notice the shape and position of these daily arcs changing dramatically with the seasons. In the middle of summer, the arc will be tight and high with a very short shadow at noon. As autumn approaches, the arc will shift and the noon shadow will grow progressively longer each day. The most fascinating part to watch for will be the days leading up to and following the equinox. During this period, the change from one day to the next is at its most subtle. The length of the noon shadow will appear almost identical for several days in a row, and you'll see the entire arc of shadows align almost perfectly along an east-west line. This is the celestial balance point in action, the same phenomenon ancient cultures worked so hard to pinpoint with their permanent markers. For those who want to take this experiment to the next level and create their own personal courtyard observatory, the process becomes even more rewarding. Find a permanent sunny spot on a balcony, a patio, or in your backyard. Instead of a temporary stick, secure a vertical object, a decorative garden stake, a short section of metal pipe set in concrete, or even a tall, slender potted plant. Using weatherproof materials, create a series of fixed markers on the ground. You could inlay small, flat stones, use outdoor tile, or even draw precise lines with permanent outdoor chalk or paint. The goal is to create a permanent scale against which you can measure the shadow's journey. Over an entire year, this permanent setup will reveal the complete story of the solar cycle. You will be able to mark the two extreme points, the longest noon shadow of the winter solstice and the shortest noon shadow of the summer solstice. The exact midpoint between these two extremes is your equinox marker. Once this is set, your courtyard will function exactly like the ancient ones, silently and reliably announcing the turning of the seasons. You can add smaller markers for the cross-quarter days, and soon you'll have a full, functional solar calendar that is uniquely tuned to your exact location on the planet. This act of creating and observing is a powerful form of mindfulness, pulling you out of the digital rush and grounding you in the slow, steady, and magnificent rhythm of the natural world, proving that the most profound technology is sometimes no technology at all. There's no question that our modern tools for tracking time are marvels of engineering. The atomic clocks that govern our world are so precise they might lose a single second over millions of years, and the GPS satellites humming overhead can pinpoint our location on the planet to within a few feet. This incredible accuracy is the bedrock of our global civilization. It allows us to synchronize financial markets, coordinate international travel, conduct complex scientific experiments, and video chat with someone on the other side of the world without a glitch. This hyper-precision has unlocked possibilities our ancestors could never have dreamed of, creating a tightly woven, interdependent global network that operates with stunning efficiency. We have gained a mastery over the measurement of time that is nothing short of miraculous. Yet, in this relentless pursuit of perfect precision, we have quietly surrendered something profound, our intrinsic connection to the natural rhythms that once gave time its meaning. For ancient cultures, time was not an abstract number on a clock face. It was a rich, multi-sensory experience deeply woven into the fabric of daily life. The length of a shadow, the angle of the sun, the crispness of the air, the behavior of animals, and the specific bloom of a flower were all part of a living calendar. Time was felt in the warmth of the spring sun, signaling the start of planting, seen in the deep gold of autumn leaves warning of the coming frost, and heard in the evening chorus of insects that marked the peak of summer. This was a holistic awareness of time, one that connected the individual directly to the cycles of the seasons, the health of the local ecology, and the shared activities of the community. A farmer didn't need to check a device to know it was time to harvest. He could see it in the heavy bend of the wheat stalks and feel it in the changing quality of the light. This disconnect has subtle but significant consequences. Our lives are now governed by the artificial glow of screens and the arbitrary dictates of time zones and daylight saving time, often pulling us out of sync with our own natural circadian rhythms and contributing to stress and a sense of dislocation. We live by clock time, which is linear, relentless, and commodified. Every minute must be spent, saved, or used efficiently. Ancient cultures lived by cyclical time, which was rhythmic, regenerative, and inherently purposeful. Their timekeeping wasn't about productivity. It was about participation, actively engaging with the turning of the great cosmic wheel. The Courtyard Observatory was a place to witness and celebrate this cycle, not just to extract a data point from it. In gaining absolute precision, we have, in many ways, lost a sense of place and a feeling of being an integral part of a larger, living system. But this doesn't have to be an all-or-nothing choice. The true ideal, the most promising path forward, may lie in a thoughtful blend of both worlds. We can absolutely continue to leverage our miraculous technology for everything from global logistics to medical breakthroughs. The goal isn't to throw away our smartphones and atomic clocks. Instead, it's about consciously reintroducing that layer of celestial awareness and natural rhythm back into our daily existence. We can use modern design to echo the wisdom of those ancient courtyards. Imagine office buildings with central atriums designed so that a beam of sunlight illuminates a piece of art or a specific gathering space only on the equinoxes, creating a moment of shared wonder and connection for everyone inside. Think of urban parks that feature simple, permanent sundials or seasonal markers, inviting people to pause and notice the sun's journey. This integration can extend into our educational practices, teaching children not just to read digital clocks but to understand the reasons behind the seasons, to track the sun's path, and to appreciate the ingenious methods people once used to live in harmony with their environment. By blending the unparalleled accuracy of our technology with the timeless wisdom of celestial observation, we can build a future that is both precisely efficient and deeply human, a world where we are globally connected yet locally grounded, masters of the clock while remaining students of the sun. To truly appreciate the genius behind these ancient solar observatories, we need to step into the minds of their builders and understand the precise celestial mechanics they mastered. This requires getting familiar with two fundamental concepts, solar altitude and solar azimuth. Think of these as the sun's celestial coordinates, a simple yet powerful way to describe its position in the sky at any given moment. Solar altitude is the sun's height above the horizon, measured as an angle. When the sun is right at the horizon at sunrise or sunset, its altitude is 0 degrees. When it's directly overhead, a point known as the zenith, its altitude is 90 degrees. Solar azimuth, on the other hand, is its compass direction along the horizon. If you were to draw an imaginary line from your feet directly to the point on the horizon directly beneath the sun, the azimuth is the angle of that point from true north. Together, these two measurements create a complete, three-dimensional map of the sun's journey across the dome of the sky, a map that ancient astronomers learned to read with incredible skill. The behavior of these coordinates on the equinox is what made the entire system work. No matter where you are on the planet, be it the snowy fields of Norway or the sandy deserts of Egypt, the sun will rise precisely due east and set exactly due west on the equinox. Its azimuth at those key moments is fixed and universal. However, the sun's altitude at local noon on the equinox is a different story. It is entirely dependent on your latitude. For an observer standing right on the equator, the sun will pass directly overhead at noon on the equinox, reaching its maximum possible altitude of 90 degrees. But as you move north or south away from the equator, the noon sun's altitude on the equinox decreases by exactly 1 degree for every degree of latitude you travel. So, at a latitude of 40 degrees north, the sun will reach an altitude of 50 degrees at local noon on the equinox. This predictable mathematical relationship was the secret key that allowed ancient builders to customize their courtyard designs for their exact location on Earth. This is where abstract knowledge met practical stone-on-stone engineering. An architect designing a courtyard in ancient Greece would first need to know the sun's altitude at their specific latitude on the equinox. Let's say they determined it to be 60 degrees. They could then use basic principles of geometry, specifically the properties of right-angled triangles, to design their shadow casting system. They knew that the length of a shadow is determined by the height of the object casting it and the angle of the sun. To ensure a shadow would hit a specific marker only when the sun's altitude was exactly 60 degrees, they would calculate the necessary dimensions. If they erected a pillar that was, for example, 10 units tall, they could calculate that at a 60-degree solar altitude, the shadow it cast would be a specific, predictable length. They would then place their equinox marker exactly that distance away from the base of the pillar. This was not a rough guess. It was applied mathematics of a high order, ensuring that the shadow would only perfectly kiss that stone when the sun was at that precise 60-degree angle in the sky, an event that occurred just twice a year. This nuanced, location-specific understanding is what allowed the same underlying principle to be adapted with stunning accuracy across vastly different regions and cultures. A courtyard built in the high latitudes of Scotland would have a much lower noon sun on the equinox than one built in the heart of Mexico. Therefore, the Scottish design would require a much longer distance between the gnomon and its equinox marker to account for the longer shadow cast by the low-angled sun. The builders in each region didn't just copy a universal blueprint, they performed the local calculations and built a system perfectly tuned to their place on the globe. This demonstrates a sophisticated, decentralized scientific tradition where the same core principles of solar geometry were independently discovered and expertly applied to create a network of accurate calendars that kept entire civilizations in sync with the cosmos, all by understanding the simple, beautiful interplay of altitude and azimuth. This beautiful diversity of human ingenuity shines brightly when we travel to the sun-drenched subcontinent of India, where temple architecture transformed the equinox into a spectacle of spiritual purification. Here, the grand temple complexes, particularly those in the southern state of Tamil Nadu, are masterpieces of celestial engineering. The towering, pyramid-like gateway structures known as gopurams were not merely decorative entrances. They were precisely oriented to frame the rising sun on the days of the equinox. As the first golden rays of dawn broke over the horizon, they would pierce through the intricate sculptural details of these colossal towers, often illuminating the inner sanctum of the temple or striking a specific deity's idol with a beam of light. This dramatic moment signaled the start of sacred rituals, but the true heart of the equinox observance often lay in the temple tank, a large, ornately carved stepped reservoir located within the courtyard. On the morning of the equinox, thousands of devotees would descend into these waters for a ritual bath, believing that the spiritually charged sunlight imbued the water with purifying energies, washing away sins and bestowing blessings for the new season. This practice, deeply rooted in Vedic astrology, saw the equinox as a moment of perfect cosmic balance, a time when the human soul could most easily align itself with the universal order. The entire design, from the alignment of the gopurum to the placement of the tank, was a coordinated effort to harness this celestial event for communal spiritual renewal. Journeying thousands of miles to the misty highlands of ancient Europe, we find a completely different yet equally ingenious solution to the same fundamental need. The Celtic peoples, particularly during the Iron Age, lived in large, conical roundhouses with a central hearth for warmth and cooking. The smoke from this fire escaped through a hole in the thatched roof, a simple and necessary architectural feature. However, these resourceful builders discovered that this smoke hole could serve a dual purpose as a sophisticated solar observatory. The roundhouses were often carefully aligned so that on the morning of the equinox, the rising sun would cast a beam of light directly through this opening. This shaft of sunlight would travel across the packed earth floor of the dwelling, often illuminating a specific post, a carved marking on the wall, or the central hearth itself. For a family living in a single, multi-purpose room, this annual event was a powerful domestic ritual. It marked a time of balance between the active, outward energy of summer and the inward, reflective energy of the coming winter. It was a signal to complete the final harvests, to assess food stores, and to prepare the home for the colder months. This integration of cosmic observation into the very fabric of daily domestic life shows a seamless blend of the practical and the spiritual, where the home itself became a microcosm of the wider universe. These two examples, from the monumental scale of Indian temples to the intimate setting of a Celtic home, reveal a profound truth about humanity's relationship with the cosmos. While the universal need to track time and honor divine forces was shared across the globe, the solutions were beautifully localized, reflecting each culture's unique environment, available materials, and spiritual beliefs. The Indian subcontinent's climate and deep-rooted traditions of ritual bathing led to the development of grand water tanks and towering stone gateways. In contrast, the cooler, cloudier climate of Northern Europe, with its reliance on hearth and home, inspired a more intimate and practical form of observation using the architecture of the dwelling itself. This pattern of local adaptation is what creates the rich tapestry of our global astronomical heritage. It wasn't a one-size-fits-all science, but a flowering of diverse intellectual and artistic expressions, all aimed at answering the same fundamental questions about our place in the universe. Each culture looked at the same sun and the same equinox, but interpreted its meaning through the lens of its own worldview, creating a magnificent variety of architectural and cultural traditions that continue to inspire awe and wonder today. These artistic elements were never merely decorative afterthoughts. They were central to the design, engineered to transform a predictable astronomical event into a breathtaking spiritual spectacle. The architects of these spaces understood that to truly move a community, they needed to engage more than just the intellect. They had to captivate the senses and stir the soul. A perfectly aligned shadow was a scientific fact, but a beam of sunlight that appeared to bring a stone serpent to life or to set a golden symbol ablaze was a miracle. This intentional theatricality elevated the equinox from a date on a calendar to a profound, multi-sensory experience that reinforced faith, unity, and cultural identity. The courtyard became a stage, and the sun was the principal actor in a divine play performed just twice a year. We can see this powerful fusion vividly in the water features integrated into many ancient designs. A still, reflective pool placed in the center of a courtyard did more than just mark a shadow. It doubled the celestial drama. As the equinox sun climbed, its light would not only interact with stone markers but also dance across the water's surface. Imagine the awe of watching the sun's golden reflection align perfectly with a shimmering mosaic at the bottom of the pool. or seeing the illuminated image of a deity appear to float on the water itself. This interplay of light and liquid added a layer of dynamism and beauty that pure stone could not achieve. The water's movement, stirred by a breeze, would make the light shimmer and dance, creating a living, breathing display that felt actively divine rather than passively observed. It was a deliberate appeal to emotion, making the abstract concept of celestial balance something beautiful, tangible, and emotionally resonant for every witness. Perhaps the most dramatic examples of this sacred artistry are found in the intricate carvings and mosaics designed as targets for the equinox light. These were not random patterns, they were potent cultural symbols, spirals representing the cycle of life, labyrinths denoting spiritual journeys, or animals sacred to local deities. The precise alignment was calculated so that a narrow shaft of sunlight, perhaps filtered through a specially designed aperture in a wall or between two pillars, would strike these symbols with pinpoint accuracy. For the entire year, this carving might sit in shadow, a beautiful but static piece of art, but for a few precious minutes on the equinox, it would be activated. A beam of light might trace the path of a labyrinth, illuminate the eye of a carved animal, or slice through the center of a spiral. This transformation from inert stone to brilliantly lit icon would have been perceived as a moment of divine communion, a literal enlightenment where the power of the sun infused the symbol with life and meaning. It was science used in the service of spiritual storytelling, proving that a deep understanding of geometry could be the very tool that creates the most powerful magic. This seamless blend challenges our modern tendency to separate STEM fields from the arts. For these ancient cultures, that division would have been nonsensical. The mathematician calculating the solar angle was the same artist sketching the sacred symbol. The engineer aligning the wall was the priest who understood the ritual significance of the light's journey. Beauty was not a separate consideration, it was an essential component of functionality. A ritual was more effective if it was more moving. A calendar was more memorable if it was more beautiful. This holistic approach meant that their scientific pursuits were infused with meaning, and their artistic expressions were grounded in natural truth. Their courtyards stand as enduring monuments to this philosophy, reminding us that our drive to understand the universe and our desire to find beauty within it are not just complementary impulses, they are two essential, interconnected parts of what makes us human. Of course, the very nature of relying on the sun meant these brilliant systems had a fundamental vulnerability: the weather itself. Imagine the anticipation building in a community as the equinox approached. The designated observer would be at their post in the courtyard each morning, eyes fixed on the horizon, only to be met with a solid blanket of gray clouds. A single overcast day at the wrong moment could completely obscure the critical sunrise or sunset alignment, while heavy cloud cover at local noon would make it impossible to see where a shadow fell. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It could mean missing the precise signal to begin a vital planting season or a major religious ceremony, events that required days or weeks of preparation. A society's entire agricultural and ritual calendar could be thrown into disarray by a stretch of bad luck with the weather, highlighting a fragility that we, with our global satellite data and atomic clocks, never have to consider. This reliance on clear skies forced these ancient astronomers to become masters of prediction and interpolation. They couldn't just wait for the one day, they had to become diligent record keepers, tracking the sun's path for weeks before and after the expected event. By carefully noting the incremental change in the shadow's position on clear days leading up to the equinox, a skilled observer could make a highly educated estimate of the exact timing, even if the key day itself was cloudy. This practice turned their science into a form of art, blending hard data with experienced intuition. Furthermore, this vulnerability is likely what spurred the development of more robust, multi-day festivals around these celestial events. Rather than a single moment, communities would celebrate over a period of several days, a practical buffer that ensured even if the main event was hidden, the rituals could still be performed within a sacred window, preserving the cultural and spiritual significance of the season. Another significant challenge was the utter lack of portability in these designs. A courtyard calendar engineered for the latitude of ancient Rome would be completely useless if copied directly to the highlands of Scotland or the deserts of Egypt. The system was hyper-local, its accuracy entirely dependent on the specific angle of the sun at that exact spot on the globe. The height of a gnomon and the placement of its shadow markers had to be meticulously recalculated for every new settlement, a process that required a deep understanding of solar geometry and likely involved years of initial observation and adjustment to get just right. This meant that this sophisticated knowledge couldn't simply be exported as a blueprint. It had to be carried in the minds of experts who could replicate the scientific process in a new land. The spread of this technology was therefore slow, moving at the pace of human migration and trade, and it required a class of skilled individuals who could translate universal principles into localized functional designs. Perhaps the most insidious threat to these ancient observatories was the slow, unstoppable force of time itself. Over centuries, even the most solidly built stone structures are subject to geological shifts. A gradual earthquake could tilt a crucial wall by a fraction of a degree. The slow sinking of foundation stones or the settling of soil could throw off delicate alignments. Even well-intentioned human activity posed a risk. Renovations, repairs, or new construction built too close to the sacred space could inadvertently block sightlines to the horizon or alter shadow patterns. A marker stone perfectly placed by a master builder 1,000 years prior could be moved by a later generation that no longer understood its purpose, perhaps using it as a simple step or a foundation block in a new building, forever breaking the celestial connection. Yet, it is in their response to these very limitations that we see the true genius and resilience of these ancient scientists. They didn't simply give up when faced with a cloudy day, they developed backup systems. Many cultures learned to cross-reference their solar observations with the cycles of the moon and stars, creating a more robust multi-source calendar. If the sun was hidden, the phase of the moon or the rise of a specific constellation could provide a secondary confirmation of the time of year. Others built redundancy into their designs by creating multiple observation points within a single complex. If one alignment was blocked or became inaccurate, a priest could move to a different marker, a different pillar, or a different vantage point to still get the reading they needed. This pragmatic adaptability shows that their science was not a rigid, dogmatic set of rules but a living, evolving practice. They understood their tools had flaws, and they engineered solutions to work around them, proving that their intellectual flexibility was every bit as impressive as their architectural prowess. Imagine a classroom not with rows of desks, but with a large, circular diagram taped to the floor, a tall post standing in the center, and a group of students eagerly waiting for the clock to strike noon. This is the power of bringing ancient astronomical courtyards into modern education, transforming abstract concepts into a hands-on, visceral experience. These ancient sites are a gift to teachers, a perfect gateway to a multidisciplinary exploration that shatters the artificial boundaries between history, science, mathematics, and art. Instead of teaching these subjects in isolated silos, educators can use the story of the Equinox courtyard as a unifying narrative. students can calculate the angles of shadows to understand geometry, study the cultural significance of the equinox in different societies for history class, learn the physics of light for science, and even design their own symbolic markers for art. This integrated approach mirrors the real world, where challenges are never solved by a single discipline alone, but through a synthesis of knowledge and perspective. The tools to make this happen are more accessible than ever. Museums and science centers are leading the way, constructing full-scale replicas where visitors can stand in the very spot an ancient astronomer would have stood, watching a shadow creep toward a marker just as it did thousands of years ago. For schools without the space or resources for a physical model, technology offers incredible alternatives. Interactive software and virtual reality can transport an entire classroom to Chichen Itza on the equinox or inside a Neolithic passage tomb at the winter solstice. Students can manipulate variables like latitude and time of year in a digital simulation, instantly seeing how the sun's path changes, turning them from passive recipients of information into active investigators conducting their own experiments with the cosmos. This kind of immersive, interactive learning doesn't just convey facts, it creates lasting memories and a genuine sense of wonder. Beyond the sheer excitement, this method fosters a profoundly valuable skill, critical thinking rooted in resourcefulness. When students are presented with the challenge, how would you track the seasons without any technology? They are forced to think like ancient problem solvers. They must observe their environment closely, identify reliable patterns, and innovate with the materials at hand. This process shifts their perspective on technology itself. A smartphone is no longer just a consumption device. It becomes understood as the latest iteration in a long human history of tools designed to solve problems, starting with the most fundamental tool of all, the human mind engaged in careful observation. It teaches them that innovation isn't always about creating something new, but often about seeing the potential in what is already there, a lesson in sustainability and creativity that is incredibly relevant today. Perhaps the most important impact of this educational approach is its ability to humanize science and inspire a new generation of thinkers. For many students, STEM fields can feel like a daunting collection of immutable facts and complex equations, a domain for geniuses alone. But when they learn that the foundational principles of geometry were discovered by people trying to predict the rainy season, or that advanced astronomical knowledge was gained by generations of people patiently recording the sun's position, science transforms. It becomes a human story. It's a story of curiosity, collaboration, and perseverance. It shows that science is not a static set of answers in a textbook, but a dynamic, evolving process of questioning the world. By connecting the dots from a shadow on a stone floor to our modern understanding of the solar system, we give students something priceless, the realization that they are part of this same, ongoing story of discovery, and that their own curiosity is the most valuable tool they will ever possess. This ancient dialogue between architecture and the heavens is experiencing a powerful renaissance, not as a historical curiosity, but as a vital blueprint for a more sustainable and meaningful future. Today's most forward-thinking architects and urban planners are actively looking back, mining these millennia-old techniques for solutions to our most pressing modern challenges. The principles of passive solar design, so brilliantly demonstrated in those ancient courtyards, are now being encoded into the very DNA of green building standards worldwide. We're seeing a profound shift from fighting our environment with energy-intensive heating and cooling systems to collaborating with it, using the sun's predictable path as a primary design partner. This isn't about bolting solar panels onto a conventional box. It's about fundamentally rethinking a building's form and orientation from the ground up, a concept now formally known as solar geometry. The application of this wisdom is both high-tech and elegantly simple. Sophisticated software allows modern architects to model the sun's movement across a virtual building site with incredible precision, determining the optimal placement of windows, the depth of overhanging eaves, and the thermal mass of materials. The goal is to maximize natural light during the winter months while providing shade in the summer, creating a comfortable interior environment with a fraction of the energy demand. We see this in buildings with strategically placed thermal mass-like stone floors or concrete walls that absorb the sun's heat during the day and slowly release it at night, just as ancient stone courtyards would radiate the day's warmth after sunset. This is low-tech genius amplified by modern understanding, resulting in structures that are not only incredibly efficient but also more pleasant and healthy to inhabit, filled with natural light and intimately connected to the rhythms of the day and season. Beyond individual buildings, this philosophy is reshaping our public spaces and even our cultural landscape. Imagine walking through a city park and encountering a modern art installation that also functions as a celestial calendar. A sleek, polished obelisk could cast a shadow that aligns with inlaid stone patterns only on the equinoxes, creating a moment of shared discovery and wonder for passers-by. These contemporary markers would serve as both public art and open-air classrooms, silently educating communities about astronomy and our place in the cosmic cycle. They transform a routine lunch break or an afternoon stroll into an opportunity for connection, subtly reintroducing a sense of cosmic time into our often rushed and artificial urban existences. This is more than decoration. It's a form of place-making that layers scientific and historical meaning onto our shared environments, fostering a deeper sense of identity and belonging. This movement is coalescing into a broader design philosophy often called slow architecture, a direct parallel to the slow food movement. It champions a more deliberate, thoughtful approach to building, one that prioritizes local materials, harmonizes with the local climate and topography, and respects natural cycles rather than seeking to overpower them. It asks us to consider the entire life cycle of a building, from the sourcing of its materials to its eventual decay, designing for durability, adaptability, and minimal environmental impact. A slow architecture project might involve renovating an old structure using traditional, breathable materials instead of demolishing it, and building anew with carbon-intensive concrete and steel. It values craftsmanship and beauty alongside efficiency, creating spaces that are not just shelters but sanctuaries that nurture the human spirit. This approach recognizes that true sustainability isn't just about reducing kilowatt hours. It's about creating environments that are spiritually and ecologically regenerative, fostering well-being for both people and the planet. By embracing these ancient lessons, we aren't abandoning progress. We are steering it toward a wiser, more harmonious destination. We are learning to build a world where our homes and cities feel less like machines for living and more like living ecosystems themselves, deeply integrated into the fabric of their place. This is the ultimate legacy of those ancient sky watchers, not just a method for tracking shadows, but a timeless invitation to build a future that honors the delicate, beautiful balance of our world. The silent courtyards of the past speak volumes about human ingenuity and our eternal dance with the cosmos. They stand not as ruins, but as enduring monuments to a time when humanity's most advanced technology was its own capacity for observation, its patience, and its profound connection to the world around it. In these open-air observatories, our ancestors achieved something truly remarkable. They mastered the delicate art of reading the skies without a single tool, transforming sunlight and shadow into a reliable calendar, a spiritual guide, and a communal touchstone. This was a knowledge system built not on circuitry and code, but on stone and spirit, on the precise alignment of a pillar and the shared gasp of a crowd as a beam of light found its mark. Their legacy is a breathtaking fusion, a beautiful tapestry where threads of precise science are inextricably woven with rich artistry and deep spirituality, reminding us that these ways of seeing the world were never meant to be separate. As we navigate our own complex modern challenges, from the looming shadow of climate change to the constant buzz of digital overload, the wisdom embedded in these stones feels more relevant than ever. Their approach offers a powerful antidote to the disconnection that so often defines our age. They invite us to look up from our screens and reconnect with the fundamental, grounding rhythms of the natural world, to notice the angle of the light through our own window, the length of the day, and the turning of the seasons. This isn't a call to abandon our technology, but to balance it. It's an invitation to rediscover the value of slow, patient observation and to embrace simpler, more sustainable solutions that work in harmony with the planet rather than straining against it. The ancient courtyard teaches us that efficiency doesn't always require complexity, and that true innovation can often be found in elegance and simplicity. This journey through time shows us that the most profound discoveries often begin with a simple question and a willingness to watch closely. The architects of these celestial calendars were not so different from us. They were people seeking order, meaning, and a way to thrive in their world. They looked up at the vast, seemingly chaotic sky and found patterns. They used the materials they had to build an understanding that would guide and inspire generations. Their story is ultimately a testament to human creativity and resilience, a powerful reminder that we are all capable of extraordinary things when we engage with our world with curiosity and respect. Thank you for joining this exploration into how ancient courtyards calculated the equinox. If you enjoyed unraveling this historical mystery with us, feel free to share your own thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more journeys into the fascinating secrets of the past.